like if the movies The English Patient and The Sixth Sense had a baby, and that movie baby didn't want to be a movie when it grew up, and it decided to be a fashion show instead. That's right, today we're going to be talking about Phantom Thread, the 2017 Paul Thomas Anderson romantic drama. Now, if The Sixth Sense thing is throwing you off, don't worry, I will thoroughly explain it in a minute. So Phantom Thread is starring Daniel Day-Lewis as Reynold Wilcox, Vicky Krieps as Alma, and Leslie Manville as Cyril. Now, of course, this is the nitty-gritty review, so this is going to contain some spoilers. If you don't want any spoilers, go check out my itty-bitty review, which is going to be a much more condensed, spoiler-free review for Phantom Thread. Alright, so now that that's out of the way, let me explain the Sixth Sense thing. So Phantom Thread, like Sixth Sense, has kind of a twist ending, though a much less dramatic and interesting one than the Sixth Sense. But that's not necessarily where that comparison came from. For me, it came with the Munchausen syndrome by proxy storylines. In The Sixth Sense, one of the ghosts is a child who died because her mother poisoned her because of Munchausen by proxy syndrome. So that's not exactly what happens in Phantom Thread, but there is definitely kind of a codependent, symbiotic Munchausen thing going on. Essentially, we find out in the end that Woodcox is allowing Alma to poison him, and then she kind of, nurses him back to health and, is the one to care for him when he's vulnerable, and they both seem to really like that codependent kind of relationship, which is kind of the big twist at the end. I felt I needed to explain that because I think the similarities are there, but I know it's a bit of a stretch. So the first category in my grid is going to be genre. Phantom Thread is a romantic drama, but it really doesn't have much romance. Technically, the plot does revolve around the relationship that builds between Reynold Wilcox and Alma, but we really don't see much of that relationship, at least from a romantic point of view. We do see that he tries to exert control over her. We see her kind of fight back, and we see this kind of push and shove, give and take type of relationships start to build, but it really doesn't feel romantic. We don't really see them have much physical contact. Certainly no sex scenes, nothing sexy at all. And I'm not saying that every romantic drama needs to have tons of sex scenes or be all about the flirtations or anything like that, but I mean, it's in the title. There needs to be some sort of romance there, and I just felt like it wasn't that the movie was subverting tropes or doing anything different with them. It was just ignoring them altogether, which I think is a mistake. I know tropes can be iffy because if overused or if played wrong, they become very cliched, very stale, very quickly. But when you don't have any of those tropes, it just feels like a movie that doesn't know what it is. Having a romantic drama that doesn't have any romance is like having a Western that doesn't have any cowboys. If I'm missing a genre that it could fit into a little bit better, please let me know in the comments below, because I don't know what else to place it in. That seemed like the best fit to me when I checked IMDb. It also listed it as a romantic drama. That's where it seems to fit best to me. It almost fit into a thriller, except nothing thrilling ever really happened. It was almost like a melodrama, except there wasn't really any emotions. So it kind of almost fit into a few different categories, but just sort of fell flat. As far as tropes and cliches and twists and things like that go within the category of genre, I really didn't find anything spectacular. It was all pretty neutral down the line. I did think the world building within the genre was pretty well done, and we get backstory interspersed here and there. I thought that was really well done. So as far as the world building goes, I thought that was pretty solid. But every other area within genre really didn't hit the mark for me. So for genre overall, I'm going to give Phantom Thread a 5.33 out of 10, which is a solid C. Pretty neutral, pretty mediocre, right down in the middle, 5.33 out of 10. So next category is going to be writing. I thought the plot was fairly solid. It was just so slow. I mean, it was a movie that really focused on the characters above all else, and there was nothing interesting about these characters, to me at least. I was just left with this feeling of I don't care and I'm bored throughout most of the movie. And I don't want to be misunderstood. I don't have a problem with slow movies. I think that can be done very, very well. I love character-based movies. I like movies that take their time getting to know characters. One of my favorite movies of 2016 was Jackie, which was criticized by critics and audiences alike as just being way too slow. I thought it was beautiful. So my problem isn't with the pace in and of itself. It's the fact that the plot had such a slow pace, and then I didn't care about the characters. It just felt like a slow smolder to a little puff of smoke. It just didn't do anything for me, and I really think it comes down to the characters. I just didn't really understand their relationship, and I mean that beyond the sense of, obviously they had an unhealthy relationship we realized towards the end, but even aside from that, just why were these people together? What drew them together? What was the relationship based in? There was just no emotional resonance. There was no romance. There was nothing likable about these characters. Nothing that made me root for them to stay together. There was just nothing. And by the time we finally get to the twist at the end, like, yes, that was a good twist. And I do think going back and watching the movie a second time, which I don't think I will ever do, but if I did, I think there would probably be, maybe a little bit more, interesting things to pick up on knowing that ending. But that said, I pretty much knew about 10 minutes into the movie that there was going to be some sort of disturbing twist at the end. I was kind of leaning more towards thinking it was going to involve the sister, just because Wilcox and Cyril seemed to have a kind of a weird relationship, and even Cyril and Alma. There were just weird relationships going on, and it was pretty obvious very early on there was going to be some revelation at the end to give us more information about these characters. And then when it came, it was kind of like, I don't know. And I think had the whole story been condensed to like a 15-20 minute tops short film, I think it could have been very interesting in a film that short. You can look at the pretty pictures and the good acting and, an interesting twist at the end, and that's enough. Whereas a whole movie of that, God, it got old fast. So really my biggest complaints within the writing is going to come within the character arcs, because I really thought they fell pretty flat. I didn't see really any change from start to finish within these characters. And then within the outer goal and inner need of both Reynolds and Alma, I really just didn't feel like there was much of any there. So those are my two biggest complaints, but there were still some strengths within the script as well. The plot was solid, the dialogue was really good, the character development was good. I just felt like there was some stuff missing that just made the script fall flat and just feel very slow and very lacking of all emotional resonance. It was just, just really not my thing, I guess. So the total score for writing is going to be a 4.8 out of 10, which is still going to be a solid C. So the next category in the grid is going to be editing. I thought the overall editing of Phantom Thread was fine. It was kind of hard to judge the editing in this movie because it was a very still movie. There wasn't really any camera movement. There was barely any movement of characters. It was very photographic, it was a very still movie, which doesn't mean that there can't be, faults and strengths within the editing, but it just really, nothing stood out to me as being particularly interesting or particularly bad. I think my biggest complaint within the editing is really not the editor's fault, so I feel kind of bad lumping it in here, but the pacing of the movie, it was so slow. And again, I don't have a problem with slow movies. There was just no connection for me with the characters. So there were several scenes where we just, held on a single reaction shot of a character, and it just was a blank stare, which can be good. There was one part where Cyril, she starts off with a really blank face, and then as she walks to the door to open it, she kind of lights up with a smile, and you kind of realize something about her character in that moment. So that was, a nice use of that device, but they kept using it for every character over and over, just these still emotionless shots of people's faces that were just held for way too long. And I'm certain that was a Paul Thomas Anderson decision. I don't think it's the editor's fault. And the actors were doing a very good job with it. It's not that they were acting badly by not showing emotion. It's what the script called for. But I really felt like a lot of those reaction shots could have been cut at least in half, for my personal tastes at least, because I just felt I just didn't have any emotional connection to these characters. And if I did, I think there can be some really interesting things that happen when you hold on a character for a long amount of time. Like the example with Jackie, there's tons of shots like that, and they're extremely powerful. And I just didn't feel that with this movie. The total score for editing is going to be a 4 out of 10, which is going to be a C-. Really, the main thing that brought that score down from a solid C is going to be that pacing. Everything else was really pretty average, nothing bad, nothing good, right down the line. But that pacing is kind of where I drew the line and knocked it down just a little bit more, just because it was just so long and nothing was happening. So the next category in the grid is going to be the sound design. Now, I know the score for Phantom Thread is getting a lot of buzz, and it's one of the 6 nominations that it received for the Academy Awards this year. That said, I didn't actually care for the score too much. It was very well composed and the music was beautiful, but I really didn't feel like it added any emotions to the movie, and it just felt very overbearing and very much so like it was trying to draw the attention of the Academy Awards. It just felt very award baity. So that's my biggest complaint. It's not that the music itself is bad, it's a beautiful score. I just didn't think it helped tell the story at all, and it just felt very loud and unnecessarily so. And on a similar note, one of my biggest complaints within the overall sound mix came in the scenes where Alma's eating breakfast and the noises are distracting to Reynolds. And what I didn't like about that is that the sound mix, it just sounded very much so like they just took the sound that was naturally recorded and just turned the volume up, as opposed to recording it separately and mixing it in a little bit more seamlessly. And I know it's supposed to be, loud, obnoxious, and very noticeable. Obviously, I got that, but I just didn't think it sounded very good. It sounded kind of grainy and just like all they did was bump the sound up. So that's just another example of something that just sort of fell flat for me. So the total score for the sound, which is going to include the score and soundtrack, as well as the sound effects and the overall sound mix, is going to be a 4.67 out of 10, which is going to be a C-. So the next category is going to be the acting and the casting. And it should really come as no surprise that this is by far the strongest category within this film. Of course, anybody who's familiar with Daniel Day-Lewis is going to know that he's, just in general, a very phenomenal actor, and he really brings his A-game to Phantom Thread. And of course, this movie is noteworthy for being allegedly his last film appearance, and of course he's nominated for Best Actor for his performance in Phantom Thread at the Academy Awards. And for as much as I disliked this movie overall, I can respect that, he deserves to be within that list of people, because his performance was really phenomenal. But it's not just Daniel Day-Lewis that stands out within this movie. You have Leslie Manville, who plays Cyril, who is also nominated for, she's nominated for Best Supporting Actress for her role in Phantom Thread, and I really thought she did a phenomenal job as well. She just does a really good job of portraying a lot with saying very little. So I thought she did a really good job. But somebody who I'm not hearing too much about is going to be Vicky Krieps as Alma, and I thought she did. She was really on par with Daniel Day-Lewis throughout the film, but she definitely had the most life in her character, I think. And I think that was very intentional on the part of Paul Thomas Anderson's directing, that, she'd be a very stark contrast to the Woodcocks. So for as much as I disliked Phantom Thread as a movie in general, I can definitely take a step back and realize that the acting is phenomenal, and I understand why it's receiving acclaim. So the acting, for sure, really, really strong. I gave it a perfect 10 out of 10. So the next category is going to be directing and cinematography. And I think this is an example of a movie where, technically speaking, everything is very beautiful. The mise-en-scène of each individual shot, the lighting just makes everything look like a classic painting. Everything looks very, very beautiful. I did personally find the lack of camera movement and movement within frames in general just kind of gave the movie a stagnant feel overall. And I really didn't feel like the lighting helped contribute to the mood too much. And it definitely didn't contribute to the storytelling overall. It pretty much just looked really pretty. Was it more than eye candy? Not really. So for the directing and cinematography overall, I gave Phantom Thread a 6 out of 10, which is going to be a B-. So it's definitely above average. It's definitely, like I said, technically speaking, very, very well done, very beautiful, but it just lacked heart and a certain emotional resonance that definitely prevented me from knocking that score up into the 8 range. But still a B-. That was a pretty good grade. So definitely, there's definitely some beautiful stuff going on, and I can definitely appreciate that. I just wish it had contributed to the storytelling a little bit more, and maybe, added to some emotions. Because I think overall, I think that's my biggest complaint within the movie, is that there just wasn't an emotional connection. So the next 2 categories I'm going to lump together. That's going to be the character aesthetics and the environmental aesthetics. So character aesthetics is going to be hair, makeup, and costumes, while environmental aesthetics is going to be sets, props, and locations. So for the character aesthetics, it should come as no surprise that the strength of the category easily came within the costumes. I'm not the most well-versed when it comes to the fashion world, so I kind of just felt like I was looking at, very pretty dresses people would wear to the Academy Awards, that kind of a thing. I mean, they were very gorgeous dresses, but as far as, I know it's nominated for an Academy Award for Best Costume Design, and I'm kind of on the fence as to, whether or not I think it should win that category. I really kind of don't think it does. I think it deserves a slot in the nominations list, but I do think there are some better contenders out there overall, just because, like I said, it just kind of felt, it's very gorgeous, very well done. The craftsmanship and the quality is there. It's definitely award nomination worthy stuff. I'm not saying that it, shouldn't be there. I just feel like there were some movies that did some more creatively interesting things within the movies of 2017. So I kind of don't think it should win. That said, it probably will. That's okay, I guess. The quality's there, the craftsmanship's there. There are worse movies that could have been nominated. For the environmental aesthetics, I think kind of the sibling to the fashion within the character aesthetics is going to come with the food design. This is something I don't normally notice in movies, and I almost wonder if it was like a boredom hunger kind of thing, but the food in this movie, man, that was some good-looking food. And I liked that it wasn't filmed in kind of, long pans of a banquet table kind of thing. It was just kind of there and a part of the scene. But, yeah, whoever was crafting the food on Phantom Thread really did a great job. As far as the hair and makeup and sets and locations go, those were all still very well done, but definitely not pushed into the perfect range like I put with the costumes and the props. So both categories for character aesthetics and environmental aesthetics are going to average out to an 8 out of 10, which is going to be an A-. So the next category in the grid is going to be impact on film. And this one I divide up into 3 separate subcategories, and that's going to be critical impact, cult impact, and inspirational impacts. And for critical and cult impact, I pretty much looked to Rotten Tomatoes for my scores. So for Phantom Thread, I gave the critical impact a 4 out of 5, and I got that score pretty much based on Rotten Tomatoes. As of the recording of this review, the Tomato Meter score is going to be a 91% with an average rating of 8.4 out of 10. So I kind of converted those 2 scores and averaged them out to come up with the 4 out of 5 rating. Similarly, for the cult impact, I gave Phantom Thread a 3 out of 5. The audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is going to be a 70% with an average rating of 3.7 out of 5, which again, if I kind of convert those and average them out, it comes out to about a 3 out of 5. So I'd like to just point out for the record that I do realize that my opinions on Phantom Thread are not representative of everybody. Critics for sure seem to just be ranting and raving about how good this movie is, and even the audience score is pretty high. That's why I include the impact on film categories in my grid, so that I can kind of weigh in other people's opinions a little bit and try and be as objective as possible. I know my opinions are going to be very subjective, but I want to be as objective as possible. So for inspirational impact, I gave Phantom Thread a 3 out of 5, which might be a little bit high. I feel like it's kind of going to fall within the same realm as, say, The English Patient, which got a lot of critical acclaim when it first came out, and people still seem to really like it. But it's not a movie that gets, mentioned a lot or referenced a lot, and it's not something that, if you read film textbooks or essays things like that. It's really not one that gets, name dropped very often. So I kind of think that this one is going to fall more within that range. So I was going to give it a little bit of a lower, maybe a 1 or a 2 instead of a 3. But given the fact that, it is Daniel Day-Lewis and Paul Thomas Anderson also is very well known and very well respected. And also it's going to be Daniel Day-Lewis's, again, allegedly his last film. So I think all of those reasons are going to kind of, culminate in not just more people watching it and appreciating it, but, it's probably going to, have a little bit more of a lasting impact on film, just for those reasons. So for impact on film, those 3 subcategories are going to average out and convert to a 6.67 out of 10, which I consider a B-. The next category in my grid is going to be overall enjoyment. I really shouldn't be a secret by now after, everything I've gone through with the grid, but I really, really did not enjoy this movie. I was bored pretty frequently throughout. The first act, I was kind of fantasizing about walking out of the theater, which I've never done before in my life, and still haven't, so I guess that's not really something worth noting, but it was definitely in the back of my mind that maybe I should. I considered not doing a review on it, because I knew I disliked it so much, and that doesn't seem to be the common opinion of this movie, but I decided to just move forward with it and be honest with my opinion, and my opinion is this movie was boring and I don't understand the point. It definitely had things about it that were very beautiful. It had some very, very strong things to it. It did a lot of things really well, but as far as enjoyment goes, I was bored, and I don't think I will ever rewatch this movie. So I gave it a 2 out of 10 for overall enjoyment, which is a D-. I don't know what else to say in that regard. I did not like this movie. So I did give Phantom Thread 1 point of extra credit, although it is for something I already mentioned, but, oh well. So I gave Phantom Thread 1 point of extra credit for the food. Like I said, I know I already mentioned that within props, but I feel like this is more specific than just props, and it's not something that really gets talked about a ton in most movies unless it's a movie about food. But I just really thought that the food was really well crafted, and it made me hungry throughout the movie, so props to them, and point of extra credit. So the total score for Phantom Thread is going to be a 60.47, which is going to be a B-. Really the only thing that pushed it up into that B range instead of a C+, it's going to be that extra credit point for the food. So it was really close to being in that C range. It was really kind of averages out to being a pretty mediocre movie, in my opinion. And that doesn't mean there aren't areas that really, really excel. Like I said, acting, perfect 10 out of 10. The aesthetics of the movie were also, A-. So there are things that it does really, really well, and that should definitely be celebrated. And it is. It's got nominations in those categories, and and that's awesome. It definitely deserves those. But as far as a movie as a whole, I really felt like it was lacking a lot. There was just a lot of stuff that was really average about it, and some stuff that was just downright, I just didn't like. And I know a lot of that comes down to personal preference. I know I seem to be relatively alone in my opinions. I just know that I found this movie to be lacking in a lot of areas, and I really don't think it deserves to be nominated for Best Picture. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff, individual categories that deserve to be celebrated, deserve to be nominated, but as a whole, I just didn't think this movie worked. So I'm kind of baffled as to why it's been kind of elevated to that position or to that nomination. I just really think that I just don't understand why Phantom Thread was put in that category, but I feel like there were other movies that were far more deserving. As far as recommendations, that's kind of a hard one for me. As far as like people I know, I probably wouldn't recommend it to anybody, but that's because the people I know have, for the most part, pretty similar tastes in movies as me, so I feel pretty confident that they also wouldn't like it. However, this movie is getting very high critical reviews, and even the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is fairly high. So there's obviously, there are things about this movie people are responding to very positively that I seem to just be missing. So I don't really know how to go about recommending this movie to people other than to say I didn't like it. So yeah, so that's kind of my take. I don't really know what else to say. I guess that's pretty much it. If you've seen Phantom Thread, and particularly if you've liked it, I'm dying to know what you think and what it is about it that you like, what you responded to. So yeah, let me know what you thought in the comments below. Hey, thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you liked what you saw, don't forget to subscribe to Griddy Films on YouTube by pressing this button. Also, like and share this video. You can follow Griddy Films on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for new video announcements, entertainment news, fun pics, and more. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.